Welcome everybody to another live developer cast here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel. We have a great one for you tonight. We're going to be talking about pinball design and especially about trying to craft it or mold it into a traditional game or traditional game progression. And joining me is a designer who's currently working on a Kickstarter game that's planning on doing just that. So please welcome to our live stream today from Trick Gaming Studios, Leandro Gonzalez.
Hi, Josh. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for having me.
No problem, Leandro. How are you doing today?
Oh, doing great, doing great. Here, at the office, working on the game, having some coffee, so don't ask for more.
Awesome. So as I just said, Leandro is currently working on the Kickstarter project for the game Pinball Invaders Space Warfare. And we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes on the cast. But to get things started with, for people tuning in either live or recorded, could you talk a little bit about your background when it comes to the game industry or where Trick Gaming came from?
Yeah, for sure. I'll try to keep it short if possible, but I always been a fan of video games since I'm a kid, so I always wanted to work on games. I remember even playing Mario when I was like 4 or 5, the first Mario, and being like, hey, this is what I want to do. So flash forward a few years, we went with Julian is the name of the co-founder of the studio. We went to study engineering. And here we don't really have a big game industry in Argentina. That's where we are located. So after we graduated, I'm talking about 11 years ago now, for the first 4 or 5 years, we worked on doing other kinds of software, no games. It took us like 4 or 5 years, to just to just get into the industry. So that's basically our background. We did in the 11 years we've been doing software for a living. For the first 5 we did corporate software. We got really good at the good thing is we got really good at doing APIs, and all the services there. And around 5 years ago is when we started with Trick. Well, that's the short story. I don't want to make it too long, but that's basically it.
Awesome. So where did the inspiration for creating a pinball game come from?
So, sorry, can you repeat again, because it broke up a little bit and I didn't hear the first part.
Where did the inspiration for working on a pinball game come from?
Oh, well, it's it does explain that a little bit in the Kickstarter too, but when we were kids here, we went to this place, this arcade downtown. It was called Sacoa, right? And we actually have some footage there that we use for the Kickstarter. So at that time we would go and play. Pinball was still really popular in the arcades, and at the same time we were playing other games like I remember playing Metal Slug, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. There was kind of a mix of pinball and the digital games, and it's around the same time that the consoles were starting to become popular here, that you would get a console at home. So on one hand I would play Mario, Zelda, a little bit later Pokemon here at home, and on the other hand I would go to the arcade and play pinball. So when we decided to make this this game around a year and a half ago, we said, okay, what game do we want to make? What is cool for us? What game would we like to play? And the idea of mixing pinball and other genres, like having RPG elements there, came out of one of those sessions. Like, it was a brainstorming here in the office, and we all were like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, but how do we pull it off, right? It's not something easy to do. So I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get to talk more about Pinball Invaders in the next few minutes. Now, I guess going back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, Leandro, regarding the state of the game industry in Argentina, I guess, have things improved at all since you started Trick Gaming Studio, or is it still relatively small?
Yeah, it's growing a lot. It's growing a lot, and actually not only since we started the studio, even before that, right? When we graduated, like I was saying, like 11 years ago, and we had to get into corporate. It was really hard to get a job making games in Argentina. But by the time we started the trick, there were already a few companies popping up here and there, especially in Buenos Aires. You know, the truth is, Buenos Aires today has a very healthy video game industry. We're located a little bit down south. It's like 3 hours away from Buenos Aires in a city called Mar del Plata. It's a little smaller here, but I would say today it's easy. It's way easier to get a job making games here in Argentina. So I guess, even though the industry is pretty small on a global scale, I think Argentina has, less than 1% of the global gaming industry. It's still it's easier now if you want to work making games.
Mm-hmm. And that's always really good to hear that things are improving. I've had a chance to talk to other international guests over 2017, and they all have similar stories of how things are starting to grow around or grow globally when it comes to independent studios and being able to work on games anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely, something that. Oh, by the way, I see we have someone from Argentina also on the comments. Hi, Oscar. Yes, when after this is part of the story that I didn't say when I wanted to keep it short, but right after college I moved to the States. I lived in Austin for like 6 years. And that was something I had to do in order to get into the industry in my case, because by being there and being able to move around, that's how we got our first clients. And to be honest, it was pretty hard. Well, the States it's a beautiful place, the best country in the world, in my opinion. But still, when you have to be away from family, friends, and everyone, you miss them a lot. So that was hard for me to leave the country, to have to start the company. So it's really great that now there's a lot of talent here that may not want to, have to leave and be away from the people they love, and that also makes sense, right? You don't. Why do you have to make such an effort, of leaving everything behind to get into an industry that you like? So that has changed, and I think that's really good for the people here, and I think we're gonna start seeing a lot more of games that come from Argentina and other places in Latin America in general.
Yeah. And it's definitely great to hear that. Over the last, wow, I think it's like last few years, I had a chance to talk to developers, I think, in Brazil. What was it? Oh man, Joy Mashers. And I recently spoke to Abile Studios, who work with Loco Milito on their games. And it's really great to see just more diverse offerings come from the independent space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look at this, for example, right? Something that a game that we all learn to love lately, The Witcher, right, from Poland. So that's obviously based on some books that were written there. If the gaming industry wouldn't be so international as it is now, we would be missing on all those stories and experiences. So not only that's an example, but imagine all the different stories or all the magical stories that we have here from Latin America with our culture or anywhere else in the world. I'm for one, I'm looking forward to see all these different cultural influences starting to merge into the games that we play.
Definitely. So I think with that, let's talk a little bit about Pinball Invaders and the Kickstarter, and then we'll move into talking more about pinball design in general. So, for the folks watching this right now, either live or recorded, as I said a few minutes ago, you guys are currently wrapping up or in the midst of your Kickstarter for Pinball Invaders Space Warfare. So, for the people watching this right now, could you kind of give us the pitch of what that game is about?
Oh yes, for sure. Let's see how can I summarize it, because I'm so involved with the game that I could talk for 1 hour about it. So I'd rather try to find a way to summarize it. So, in short, we said, let's make a game where we can tell that will be a story. We can tell what happened after, and this is kind of an internal shock. We can tell what happened after the invaders attacked Earth. That was 60 years ago in this universe, and nobody was able to defeat them. Of course, because the original game you couldn't beat it, right? There was no end to that game. So the original invaders game I'm mentioning. So we said, okay, what happened at that's kind of the setting. What happened at that moment? Humanity had to leave Earth, and the thing that was more important there was the pinball machines. So we took that with us to space and started a new life there. So now, 60 years later, that humanity has perfected the pinball warfare. That's it's a kind of a fun setting. We want to come back and have our revenge. This is quote unquote revenge, and we want to take back Earth. Well, that's kind of the setting, right? Then the gameplay, of course, as you know, is a mix of pinball with with a shoot 'em up, with RPG elements. There's a little bit of everything there, and that's where it got really hard to balance all those elements.
Yeah, and it's very tricky to combine pinball with other game designs, as we're going to talk about in the next few minutes, I'm sure. Now, when it comes to Pinball Invaders, like as a Kickstarter itself, this is a question I always like to ask our guests who are either currently or just ran a Kickstarter. Was Pinball Invaders made explicitly in mind to go to Kickstarter, or did that come during the development process?
You mean if we... Okay, can you say that again? Because I think there were 2 or 3 words that broke out for me and I couldn't...
Yeah, sure. When you came up with development for Pinball Invaders, did you have the idea to go to Kickstarter right from the get-go, or did that happen during the development of it?
Oh, okay. No, it definitely happened during the development. Because, when we started working on the game, we didn't really know what we were getting into in terms of scope, right? We thought it was going to be way easier to do a good pinball engine, to do the physics, everything, that it was going to be easier to build the levels. So after working like a year and a half, we came up with, we have a great 2D pinball engine now. The physics, everything is really tweaked, but now in order to build all the content that we started coming up with ideas for this year, we have to do 7 chapters. That's 105 levels. So that's a lot of content, right? And we really need the help to be able to build all that content. But no, we didn't know at the beginning that we were going to do a game that has so many levels and so many boss fights, and power-ups, etc.
Now, one thing that's very interesting is that you guys are, of course, getting help by Farsight Studios. And for those of you watching this either live or recorded right now, Farsight Studios is the developer behind the Pinball Arcade. And they have spent, I think, over a decade now digitizing real pinball tables and working on their platform. I guess, how did they get involved with Pinball Invaders?
Okay, that's a story to tell too. So we met first with Farsight. That was kind of by coincidence around 4 years ago at one of the GDCs. And I came over to their booth. We had a chat, and I remember we really had a nice meeting, because they are really at that time I was meeting with Bobby and staying in the same hotel as Norman, which is the audio guys. So we during those 2-3 days of conference, we got to talk a few times, and the connection stayed from there. And then around a year and a half, 2 years ago was when I remember we met with the guys from Farsight. I'm gonna shoot an email to see what they are doing. So that's what I did, and they were really receptive. Say, hey, this sounds great. Maybe we can work together on this. We met then a couple times, met again at GDC, showed them the progress of the game. They also shared a lot of their physics calculation with us, which helped a lot, to improve how the game to have a real pinball feel.
Yeah.
And we took it from there. And I have to say, it's been a great partnership for us. I hope they can say the same.
Yeah, I've been talking to Mike at Farsight. He was the one who originally let me know about your guys' Kickstarter. So it's definitely been interesting to uh, see how things have evolved on that front. You just mentioned, Leandro, that they kind of showed you their physics models, or kind of like the backings for that. And obviously, for anyone who's played pinball, especially digital wise, getting the physics right is very tricky. Because I've played plenty of tables where it just feels like you can always tell when something feels off when you're playing digital pinball in some of those games.
Yeah, yeah, and that was really important for us to get it, to get it right because it's this is tricky too because part of the challenge is making a 2D pinball game that feels great. But on the other hand, also, for someone that is not a huge fan of pinball or doesn't play pinball a lot, real pinball feels too difficult, and you lose really hard, and that kind of plays against you. So how can we balance those things? So it feels good, but at the same time, you can play for a 5-10 minutes and don't get frustrated. So well, that's part of the challenge, and I think we are solving it pretty well. I don't know if you try the one that we already uploaded, which is like one level of the full game. But I think we did a pretty good job there, merging the two experiences, the traditional pinball with the digital one, and of course we're still fixing things. The feedback we got from launching this standalone table was amazing. It helped us fix so many things and improve the feeling, and it's just one more year probably of hard work until it feels perfect.
Mm-hmm. And Oscar is asking in chat, of course, are there any ideas or things that you got from Farsight since they worked obviously for a long time on pinball games?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, yes, for sure, because we can obviously I play pinball myself. I play games like Zelda, so I'm merging things in this game design. I'm trying to put together things that I love, but at the same time, I'm not an expert in pinball the way they are, right? Like you said, they've been digitizing tables for 10 years, so they know exactly what pinball is about. It's really hard, even if I start, studying 24/7 how all the pinball tables and what the flow is. I'm never gonna be at the same level as just a pinball designer as the skills they have acquired these 10 years. So things like, for example, changes we did to the boss fight in the current game that we have to, there's a worm there that starts growing through the different modes. That was the way that battle is progressing. That was an idea that Farsight sent us. Hey, why don't you do it like this? And this will resemble kind of the progression that you have in Bride of the Pinbot, which is a very popular pinball game, right? So that's an example of something where they told us, hey, what about this idea for the game design of this boss? And I have to say, it changed. It changed a lot. It made perfect sense to add that into the game, and the way the difficulty increases little by little now, and new players can get to the boss really fast, but that's an easy fight. And as you keep playing, the boss becomes more and more difficult. When you think about that in hindsight, it kind of makes sense. Why didn't we do it like that? But we, for some reason, we couldn't figure it out. And Farsa, with all their experience with pinball, say, hey, do it like this, do it like they do in this other traditional, classic pinball table, and it worked perfectly. So yeah, there's a lot of that interaction going back and forth, and it's helping us a lot.
Cool. And it's very interesting. I'm sure we'll talk probably about this more in length in the next few minutes about the difference between designing a table that's meant to be in a physical space versus designing an actual digital table. Something that, again, has no physical constraints whatsoever. And when you're free to not have to worry about that, it presents a very interesting challenge of how is this table supposed to look and how is it supposed to feel to the player when obviously they're never going to have a hands-on touch to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's a lot of that, and I think that's uh, part of what makes it difficult. But at the same time, that's where we have the most space to innovate, right? Do something that has never been done before. It's pretty. Like I say, I keep saying this word, challenging. The challenging part is that we don't have a lot of resources that we can, copy. There's not a lot. I cannot recall a pinball RPG with a progression like this. Even though we research a lot, there's nothing like this. So we're kind of in the dark, right? We try this, and out of 10 ideas that we try, maybe 8 don't work, and then we are with 2 good ideas. So that's why it took so long to come to a place where we feel the game has a good balance. It's not that it took us a year and a half to just build a pinball engine, because it doesn't take that long. Maybe it was 6 months to build the physics and the engine and tweak it, but a lot is just that test and iteration about how to make the game feel just right. And I can share more details with you about that.
Yeah, definitely. Getting that feel is very tricky. And as you just said, Leandro, there aren't too many games that have married RPG or progression systems to pinball. The only games I can think of that have gone like a pinball story route would be something like Kirby's Pinball Land way back for the Game Boy. I know there was a Mario pinball game from a few years ago, but those didn't have like RPG elements to them. The only real thing it did was like have like a level progression. Get to the top of the table, you move on to the next level, and the next level, and then there's a boss fight.
Yes, and we did check all of those. They were actually Mario in Pinball Land, I think is a really good example. Again, I'm a huge fan of Nintendo, and Nintendo always has, they have made a game similar to any idea that you can come up with. They have experimented a lot. And Mario Pinball Land was maybe, a decent game. It wasn't perfect, the physics and a lot of things, but I think they did come up with more than a few, a lot of good ideas there that, we pay attention to that, to the Kirby game, the Pokemon game is good, there's a Metroid one, too, so we're trying to do something a little bit different, but those are a lot of our influences, and those helped us a lot.
Now, getting back to Pinball Invaders and kind of its development, I noticed on the Kickstarter page that right now it's being aimed for mobile devices with the plans, hopefully, to take it to PC and consoles in the future. Was there always the intention of sticking with mobile as, I guess, the initial launch for the game?
Yeah, that's a good question, and the reason we started with mobile is because we've been doing games for mobile for the last 5 years. We're traditionally a work for hire game studio, so we started making games for other people, and as we learn and save some money, we say, hey, why don't we do our own games? And mobile is what we knew how to make better, but the idea with Invaders has always been we want to release on consoles. As I said, as a huge Nintendo fan, I would love to see this game played on the Nintendo Switch, for example. And I also think the style and everything this game has will fit really well on that platform. And of course, PC, PlayStation, we're using Unity, so it compiles for all of those platforms. And down the road, the idea is to have it everywhere. But the decision to start with mobile was just because of it's what we know how to do best.
Now, with the Kickstarter itself, I guess another question for you: did Farsight help you guys at all with planning the Kickstarter, or come with how it's supposed to look? Because again, for those of you watching this, I think they're up to, I think they've done at least 4 or 5 different pinball-related Kickstarters over the last. Again, it feels like it's been forever since they started with the Pinball Arcade.
Yeah, they did help, a lot with the campaign, and as you can see, for example, in the video we have there, obviously we send some footage, but they put together the video, part of the text. the voice that you can hear in the video, that's Shay from Parsec Studio talking. So there's a little bit of everyone in the campaign where we all added ideas and read it and reread it and and send suggestions until it took its final form.
Nice. I guess another question that I like to ask people who are working or have already worked on a Kickstarter: how long did you guys prepare the Kickstarter for before you actually went live with it?
We were working on this for probably 3 months on building the the video, getting the footage, working on the text, the images, something that requires a lot of iteration and seems, it seems basically it looks like an afterthought, but it takes a lot of time to come up with the reward tiers and what are you gonna give to all the users, what are the rewards, and how much you can spend, how much should you ask in order to be able to spend this much on the rewards. What about the international shipping? Those details take a lot of time, even though it doesn't look like it.
Oh, definitely. I've heard very similar stories from a lot of the developers I've had a chance to speak to regarding Kickstarter, especially when it comes to international shipping. That can be a killer for a lot of physical goods.
Yeah, for sure. But the good thing here is that international shipping from Argentina is a little bit complicated, but not from the States, or it's easier. So the good thing, is that in this case, with Farsight being there, the international shipping is gonna be done from there.
A few comments from chat. I guess this is a really good one. As we said, a major part of Pinball Invaders is having an RPG component to it. So, for people watching, how are RPG mechanics and design, I guess, filtered through pinball for your game?
That's a great question. I'm looking forward to talking about that and also getting your feedback, because maybe there are things that still can be polished in the game design. As we're still doing the game, so we're looking to to hear all the potential ideas to make it perfect. Something I have to mention is when you think RPG, maybe you think about statistics, and basically stats, and I can put some points here and some points there. That's not the kind of RPG that we're tackling. We're not doing something like Diablo style RPG where you have your stats and you put points there. This is more like a Zelda RPG, like an ability-based progression, where your progress and your level up is actually through the powers that you acquire, through the the mechanics, the game mechanics that get unlocked by progressing through the story, and then in order to unlock the next set of mechanics, you have to learn you have to master ones that came before, because you need to master them in order to, let's say, beat the boss that will unlock a new mechanic. So it's kind of that progression, and on top of that, there is a level, a level up system that you can already go and download Pinball Cadet, which is a standalone table, and you can see how it works. So the idea is, by completing certain missions or just by the score, because in pinball everything is about the score. It's about making the more amount of points that you can, so you can grow better in the leaderboards. You can go up in the leaderboards. So those points become immediately translate to experience. So all the points you do are your experience. That experience helps you level up. Leveling up helps you get better multipliers. That's another huge concept in pinball. So you can have this mix of, okay, play more, get more points, get better multipliers. That's like your base stats, but pretty simple, pretty simple, basic, level up system, and at the same time you have all the power ups. And the thing with the power ups is that you need to learn how to combine them. Because, for example, we have an ice ball there, right? So the ice ball will freeze the enemies on a radius of impact, right? So that will make it easier for you to hit all of them. The problem is that you're not getting a good multiplier because the multiplier is based on the chains or combos that you make. But what if you mix it with another ball like the fireball, right? The fireball, the power it has is that it can burn through enemies that don't have any armor, for example, any protection. So that will give you a large multiplier. But then with another ball like the ice ball, you can hit all enemies in an area, but don't kill them. You just freeze them. So you combine these powers and you get a high multiplier with hitting a lot of enemies at the same time. And that's the kind of decision you have to make when you play this game. If you come to a level prepared with the proper power-ups, that level is going to be easier for you than if you didn't come prepared with those power-ups.
Now, when you say the power-ups, can you switch between them at will, or is it something that happens at the start of each ball?
No, yes, you can switch. So this is the idea with the power-ups. Initially, you can only come to the level, to the mission, how we call it, with one, and then as you progress and you level up and you get in-game currency, you can unlock new slots up to 3. So then you can come to the level with more power-ups, and then once you're playing, you can spawn that kind of ball, that kind of power-up at any moment. The only thing is that you also have a limit, right? Like in a Zelda game, right? You have 20 arrows and 5 bombs when you start, and you can use them whenever you want, but then you run out. So when you run out, you have to have to make a decision there to how are you gonna spend them wisely. You don't want to just spawn power-ups and then run out of them for when you need them.
And now, I want to go back to what you just said a few minutes ago regarding Pinball Cadet. For people watching this right now, there is essentially, I guess, would you consider this like a teaser or a demo that's available on iOS and Android right now?
Yeah, we call it a demo internally. So it's that, it's a demo where we are showing the users, hey, look, we already built this. There's commitment from this team. It's not that we are just trying to sell an idea. We're trying to sell something that you can go ahead and play right now. And of course, there's a lot of work to be done, else we wouldn't be running the campaign, right? But there's a team of professionals here that are really committed to this project. And if you download it, you play, you think, wow, this is good. I can see myself playing this, especially since there are going to be more than 100 levels, with a lot of variety between those levels. So, that's what we want them to do, to use this game as a demo. Don't see it as, hey, this is the game, this is what we want to sell, Pinball Cadet. We want you to be able to try Pinball Cadet, so then, you kind of get the idea of how Pinball Invaders is going to feel.
Okay. And for people watching this, I just want to clarify that the table used in Pinball Cadet, that is not going to be like the sole table in Pinball Invaders. Like, you're going to have multiple tables in that one, right?
Yes, if possible. If we can do it, all the 105 levels, we have a different table. If we cannot have a different table, it will be, variations. Maybe we use the same base table but change a ramp here, or the patterns of the enemies are different. And initially the tables are going to be smaller, right? Because Pinball Cadet, as you've seen, that's huge. That has the size of actually around 6 or 7 pinball tables. So that would be like the later levels in the game. It would have that size, or we are also thinking to do a classic mode. So the Pinball Invaders will have all the 100, etc. levels, but also a few classic tables like Pinball Cadet. We call it classic, though it's not classic at all, right? But it's not related to the story itself or to the mission progress. So you can unlock one, right? Every, in a chapter, you beat this chapter, one of the rewards is you unlock this new table, based on that chapter. Now you can play this table whenever you want. So with that, what we're hoping to do is, we know there are a lot of more traditional pinball fans that do like the concept, but I also want to play, a table where they don't have to worry about power ups or storage. Just sit down, play 10 minutes and leave it. So we want to be able to have that experience also in the game.
And one thing that I want to point out to people watching that I think is a very interesting point about Pinball Invaders is your section regarding the fact that this is not aimed at a pure casual market. That there is definitely a hardcore element to it. So, if you wouldn't mind, Leandro, for people watching, could you go into a little bit more detail about where, I guess, the hardcore edge of the game comes from?
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I think, a perfect example I can give of that is if you give the game to, a casual player today, and it's not that easy, because it's not a game where you can just, keep button mashing to activate the flippers and win. If you do that, you're going to lose. So the first thing is you need to be patient, learn how to control the ball, and how to go for the actual objectives, how to beat the missions. And, a player that isn't involved, in the game, that just wants to play casually like any pinball game, is not going to be able to, progress through the levels. The levels actually require you to pay attention to what the mission is. For example, we have levels where you have to press, all these switches to activate this other, open this other gate, then go through that gate, collect some item, or, the boss fights. We are building a boss fight right now where you have like light panels on the floor, and there's the boss gets damaged by those light panels, but those are only activated if you go through this other ramp. So you have to time the boss being on those panels while you go through this ramp. So that's not something that you can do unless you are a player that is paying attention to actually the missions, and B, if you don't have the skills that you need to be able to pull those shots in succession really fast. So it's gonna be challenging. I think either we are, the initial version that we had to test internally was too hard. We're actually having to scale it down a little bit because
yeah,
it was actually too hard.
Yeah, and that's always one of the trickier aspects when it comes to pinball design, is the very fact that it is a very chaotic experience. Even grandmasters at pinball, you're still kind of left up to however that ball's going to shoot all over the place when it starts hitting bumpers and going up the various ramps. And I think that's always been why it's very tricky to tie traditional game elements or traditional progression to a pinball-based system.
Yes, and it's it's good that you mentioned that, because that's something I wanted to touch about. That topic is that though the physics we want them to feel ultra realistic, you're gonna notice that, for example, when the ball comes down and bounces off your flipper, it doesn't bounce that much. For example, it's easier to cradle that ball, to catch it, and control it. So you can do all the things that you can do in a real pinball table, and we're very proud of this, because this was hard to do. You can post pass, you can do a backhand shot, you can cradle, you can do a lot of things, but the ball is more controllable because the way we have the weight and everything, it doesn't feel so bouncy that you want to stop it, but it actually bounces off your flipper and goes to the other, to the out lane, and you lose. So that's kind of where we are and what we are doing with the balancing. Make it feel good, so you don't have it. That's the term, like that suspension of disbelief that you get when playing games. This is not right. Why did my character go through a wall, right? But at the same time, make it accessible, right? Because if you feel basically the ball is your avatar here in this game. So if you feel you cannot control your avatar, then the game frustrates you and you want to leave it.
Yeah, but that was also one of the things that made like playing games like Mario Pinball Land and Kirby's Pinball Land very frustrating, is when you're being told you have to do X, but you can't get the ball to where you want it to go. And I still remember, oh man, like nearly throwing my Game Boy against the wall in Kirby's Pinball Land when I couldn't get the shot to a boss, and I just like fell down like 3 tables and like one in the span of like 10 seconds.
Yeah, yes. Well, same happened, here over here when we were working on the games, and the first thing you notice is, it's like your brain knows better. For some reason, you live in this physical world, and your brain knows how to detect, that looks kind of, physics are broken. So if you are, hitting a ball with the tip of your flipper, you kind of expect it to go, at a very wide angle. Or if you are hitting it on the, on the top of the flipper, you're kind of waiting for it to go backwards. And a lot of games don't do that. A lot of the traditional digital pinball games have a very small angle. Maybe you hit it with the middle and it still goes on a wide angle. You hit it back and it still goes in an angle a little bit less, but it doesn't go where it should go.
Yeah.
And that really ruins the experience, because you are like, I know, my brain tells me that if I hit it with this, it should kind of go in that direction. And that took a lot of iterations to get right. But I think maybe I'm biased because I've been playing a lot of Pinball Cadet, but I feel it's easy to control. The ball goes where you expect it right now.
Yeah, and that's, as you just said, Leandra, it's always weird. Like if you hit the ball in the flipper and you're trying to shoot to the right, and all of a sudden just like curves to the left. It's like, what the heck just happened there?
So I see Oscar was asking something else. Sorry.
Yeah, it looks. I guess that's another really good point. Besides, obviously, when it comes to pinball, a major loss state is draining the ball. Are there other elements of losing when you're playing at a table in Pinball Invaders?
There are, there actually are, and this is also from a game design perspective tricky, because we don't want them to feel cheap, because it's pinball. So the easiest way to lose is, losing the 3 balls or 4, depending on where your power ups. As you progress, you'll have more balls. So that's the main way of losing. But there are others. For example, we were doing a few missions where you crash land on a planet, and the idea is that your spaceship breaks, and kind of liquid or water starts coming up from the bottom, and you have to fight the enemies in succession rapidly, so you keep going up in the level, and you can reach the top, and maybe deactivate or activate some device to fix your spaceship. So for example, that will be a time-based mission. If you don't beat all the enemies fast and get to the top before the water comes from below, you're going to lose, right? But we don't want to do something just like, okay, this is a time mission, you have 5 minutes. Because that sounds arbitrary, right? Why do you have 5 minutes? So actually you are gonna see how the water comes from below and it starts filling up, and you have to move faster than the water. So that's an example of a lose condition that is not just losing the balls. And of course, on top of that, something else that we have is that maybe you don't lose per se, but you can complete the levels with different rankings or insignias, that we call them. So for example, in Mario, you can just complete the levels in the latest Mario, or you can complete the levels and getting all the gold stars that they have, which is, it's really hard to get all of them. You have to be a really skilled player, and we like that. And we like that because that doesn't stop a casual player, a new player, from beating the levels and feeling they are making good progress. But for a more hardcore player, for example, you have to, in order to get the best insignia, you don't have to lose any balls, or you have to finish the game with at least 3 balls. So if you're a skilled player, you may feel like you lost even if you won, right? Because you didn't get the and in order to be up in the leaderboards, you need to be able to beat all the levels without losing any balls, and that in turn will help you get all the collectibles. We're putting a lot of skins, and you can collect. There's a Robodex in this game, So in order to get everything, you also have to beat all the levels with all the, with the better ranking. So there's a mix of different elements there.
Nice. Now, another part, like speaking about like kind of getting away from traditional pinball, would obviously have to be the boss fights. And I guess, Leandro, did you ever hear of the game Sonic Spinball for like the Sega Genesis back in the day?
Yeah. I did, and we also, watch a lot. We couldn't find a good version to play here in a Genesis, but we watch a lot of videos. I saw like a 45-minute video the other day.
Yeah, so like that was like the only game I could, that and the Kirby game, really the two that I played, that actually had boss battles relating to pinball. But I guess for Pinball Invaders itself, what kind of philosophy are you going for with the boss designs?
Well, the philosophy is that you should be able to, beat these bosses without needing power-ups if you want, just by your skills. But the bosses will also be designed in a way that the power-up that you acquire for this chapter, kind of like in the Zelda dungeons, right? You unlock a power-up, then you play through a chapter. That chapter is kind of designed to resolve around that power-up. By the time you reach the boss, you should have already mastered that power-up, and that's gonna help you a lot in the fight. So that's the easiest way to do it. At the same time, the boss is gonna be related to the next power-up that you're gonna unlock. So I'll give you an example, right? I mentioned this boss that could move on the board, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, this boss has like a rock armor, right? So with the light, we're going a little bit with fantasy here and mythology, but the light starts breaking the different pieces, So as the battle progresses, it makes it hard because every time you hit him, he smashes one of the lights on the board, right? So you start with 5, then 4, then at the end you only have one more light. It's really hard to time, so the boss will be just on that light,
Mm-hmm.
and you go through the ramp. But if you use the ice power, which is the one you acquired until now, the ice power allows you to freeze them for a couple seconds, right? So you can always freeze him, and then you got a couple seconds to go through the ramp. At the same time, since he has a rock armor, you're gonna unlock a rock power after this for the next chapter. Right? That rock power is gonna help you. There are gonna be some obstacles that are, like platforms that take 2 or 3 hits to break normally. But if you hit it with a rock ball, which is gonna be a very, powerful, obviously, because it's hard, you can just break them in one hit. So that's how we're trying to integrate all the power-ups with bosses and everything. And, that's the hardest part. I have to be honest about that. It's just...
Yeah, I bet. And do the different special balls have different physics models related to them?
The physics, no, the physics feel the same. We don't want to change. Actually, we thought about that, and we think that if we change the physics, it's gonna be frustrating for the player, because the player is gonna feel, hey, I know how to control this, and now, you're kind of cheating by making the controls feel different. But the effects are gonna be very, very different between the balls, right? Imagine, like I said, ice will freeze, fire will be able to burn through enemies without armor, even the bosses, right? You go back to one of the first bosses after you have the fireball, and you'll be like, oh, I can just defeat this boss, burn him in one shot. So that's the kind of effect it's going to have, no changes to the physics.
Cool. Now, one other major part that I want to touch on that I'm sure people are wondering about is the pricing definition for, or the pricing scheme for Pinball Invaders. As we said before, Pinball Invaders is going to be aimed for the mobile market first, with hopefully plans for console and PC ports in the future. But for people watching the game, what is, I guess, the monetization? Oh, excuse me, my voice seemed to be going out. What kind of like monetization aspects are you aiming for with Pinball Invaders?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the thing, right? I personally think I would love to do a game that you just buy once, buy it and then play it. The problem is that as, small, young studio, I don't know how people are gonna react to, hey, pay, I don't know, $9.99 for this game from this studio that is new. So we don't want to risk it and kind of our decision was to let's make it free to play, so anyone can go in and play the game without paying, and if they like it, they will hopefully make a purchase. But at the same time, you have players that don't want to be bothered, with having to make purchases in the game. They want to be like, hey, I want to pay whatever the game is worth, right? $9.99, $4.99, and play all I want. So we are trying to marry those two models too, and we had a hard time at first when we released Pinball Cadet, because unknowingly we made a few mistakes there that we fixed now. We did fix. We're listening to the players, and that's the best part of Pinball Cadet. All we're learning towards Pinball Invaders it's amazing. I'm really humbled actually by the reception of the people and all the comments and the people that take the time to write a review and say, hey, I like the game, I think this is right, I think this is wrong. So what we are deciding right now, okay, it's a model where you have you have credits, right? Because it's pinball, so you can play 5 credits and the credits refill in 30 minutes. So what's going to happen is, if you want to have unlimited credits, what you have to do is you buy the game and that's it. We never bother you anymore. But if you don't want to pay for the remove ads purchase to the unlimited credits, you play for a while and then you're gonna run out and you have to either wait or maybe you can watch a video. You have that option too. But the thing is that obviously you're going to be moving slower, and the point of this game that is mission based is that you want to beat levels, even replay levels a lot of times, so you can go up in the leaderboards, so you get kind of loot by beating the levels. You get coins. The coins are what then you use to to buy the upgrades to your power ups, to your base, to everything. So if you want just to play for free, you will, and you don't want to watch any ads, what you're gonna feel is that you are moving through the game at a slower pace, and that's basically that's all the difference. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. So with when Pinball Invaders, like if it does meet its Kickstarter and it is released, so you will have the option for someone to just outright pay for the game, or if they don't want to do that, you'll have the I guess a free to pay or that kind of monetization where they'll either watch ads or stuff along those lines in order to keep playing the game. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And something that I want to make clear, this is not a game where we're trying to go, with those kind of microtransactions like, hey, you lost, but you can play, another ball for $0.99, and that may be the difference. And we make that level so difficult that if you don't pay, you cannot beat it. That's not the deal at all. If we are going to add, some other things that you can purchase inside the game, they're gonna be more meaningful. Like in Pinball Cadet, we have the Holy Ball, right? It's a 4th ball forever, and it's kind of a good thing to have. It doesn't, if you have the skills or you play enough, you don't need it. But if you want to buy it, you can buy it, and it's an advantage for sure. But it's that kind of model. You can either pay for it upfront, you never see an ad again, and then if you want to invest on even DLC, right? Because obviously we want to make more chapters afterwards. We could put those. We put more tables, more stuff for sale, but no pointless microtransactions or everything.
Yeah. Now, I have another question regarding sort of that integration of the monetization, but before I do that, I want to go back to Oscar's question. When it comes to the boss battle designs, do the different bosses, will they have like different weaknesses or weak points to certain balls or certain strategies?
Yeah, oh yes, and we took that from Zelda, right? Like I said, I'm a huge fan of Zelda. I actually have a huge Zelda tattoo in my back, if I can say that. But so the point is to have bosses that feels similar in the sense that you cannot just go straight forward and hit that boss. It's not that the boss is going to be there sitting in the middle of the level and you hit it with the ball and you kill him. You actually have to do something on the board to show the weak points, and then that will open up a small time window where you have to time it with having good pinball skills to be able to cause some damage. An example of the boss that we have in Pinball Cadet right now is that it's kind of like a worm made of different pieces, and that obviously is kind of a throwback to Moldorm. Moldorm is that enemy that looks like a worm in Legend of Zelda. So the only weak spot is the tail, right? But we don't tell you that. But the tail, it's red and glowing and looks like, it's something that you should hit. And the rest of the body, it's protected. It's protected by a laser. So if you hit it, your ball just gets pushed back, which will actually, there's a chance that the ball will come back down faster because you're, hitting in the wrong spot. So that make you lose. So you kind of have to find that weak spot by yourself, right? So okay, here you have to hit the tail, and you'll see that piece breaks, and then the next piece of the body becomes the tail until at the end it's just the head, floating and in a different shape. That's an example. Like I said, all those the bosses will have that kind of that kind of design where you have to find the weak spot, and you have to also use the board to your advantage. Sometimes the weak spot is not gonna be so clear right away.
Nice. Now, here's a question. Oh, did you have anything else to say, Leandro?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Now, here's something that I'm wondering regarding Pinball Cadet versus Pinball Invaders. Now, obviously, Pinball Cadet is available now for anyone to try out on iOS or Android. But going forward, I guess, what will be Pinball Cadet's relationship to Pinball Invaders? Like, will it be retired? Will it be integrated? Or will something else happen?
Good question. So I think, with Pinball Cadet, we kind of went half of the way to our idea of, this mix of pinball and RPG elements. So there are things that are not in Cadet that will be in Invaders, like the power-ups that we mentioned, the levels, the enemies. There are no, except from the boss fight that we put there as an example, you don't have the actual invaders, right? That they are invading your pinball tables. That's why it's Pinball Invaders. So there's a lot more of content and elements and mechanics in Pinball Invaders than in Cadet. Cadet is more like, hey, look, this is kind of innovative mix of a classic, pinball table with missions and some digital elements. In the future, what we're planning to do is keep both games for sure, and use Pinball Cadet to release more traditional tables like the one that is there. Maybe standalone tables. Pinball Cadet we will release. We have other two design already. One is more like an industrial setting. Another one is more like in a planet, a rocky planet. So we have two big tables like the one in Pinball Cadet that we have designed, and we would like to be able to finish and put in Pinball Cadet so people can download from there. And Pinball Invaders will be a different progression model. That's the one that will actually have the levels, the power-ups, and the RPG elements. Yeah, but hopefully we can have if there's enough interest in Cadet and people like it, we can keep both games working together.
It definitely sounds interesting, kind of a way of Pinball Cadet being sort of like the training mode, or again more of the traditional pinball, while Invaders goes full into more of the RPG and the more crazier levels and boss designs.
Yes, and it's funny that you said training, because actually, that's why it's called Cadet. The story, the setting is that in Pinball Invaders, you are a rookie captain. This is your first, appointment as a recently graduated captain, and you start with a ship that doesn't have a lot of power-ups. You don't have a lot of funding from HQ to buy your power-ups and everything, but you're right out of the Pinball Academy, which is the one you're playing Pinball Cadet, right? In Pinball Cadet, it's training mission. That's why you have the targets up top. They are like, they kind of resemble the invaders. It's like shooting targets that you can practice before you actually go to the war zone, to the pinball warfare zone.
Nice. Now, I think with that said, I'm going to check our time. We just hit about an hour in terms of streaming. So I think we'll move on. Before we move on to our next topic, talking more about, I guess, pinball design in general and how it relates to Pinball Invaders, are there any aspects of the Kickstarter itself that we haven't talked about that you would like to bring up now, Leandro?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been we have covered most of the important pieces, and yeah, I kind of think anything progression. We talk about the power ups. Oh well, maybe we didn't talk about the just briefly. The Robodex. That's obviously also a little bit of Pokemon and the Pokédex there, but we are also planning on top of the power ups. We have a list of 50 other balls we want to implement, and those are not going to be power-ups per se, that you can spawn and equip on the moment. You will have to choose what's your base effect before coming into the levels. So it's like how is it that you call in games like Diablo RPG games? It's like a static effects. Right, like your gear. So, for example, you're gonna have a multiplier ball that you can unlock, and you start the level with a 2x multiplier. You will have also other versions like a 3x or a 4x, or you will have another ball that will duplicate the amount of coins. You grab a coin, but it counts as 2. So that one will help you get, more coins that you can then spend on upgrades. But obviously, you're gonna have a lower score, right? So you have to make a decision. Do I want to go for the leaderboards, or do I want to come with a ball that will give me more coins to be able to upgrade, and I will go for the leaderboard later. Like that, we have 50 different balls planned, and one of the parts of the meta game is to complete all the ball collection. That's the Robodex, because each ball is like a little robot, right? Like BB-8 from Star Wars. Each ball represents a little robot, so you have to complete the Robodex. And in order to complete the Robodex, it's gonna be challenging. You're gonna have to beat all the levels with, eventually with all the insignias, like we said, without losing balls for the harder to get balls.
Nice. And again, it sounds like there's a lot in terms of advanced play to Pinball Invaders. I think that's very interesting when it comes, again, to trying to marry traditional game design progression to something that, for a lot of people, is considered, you're playing a pinball table for maybe, my voice is dying again, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, and then that's it.
Yeah, we're this is what's been keeping us away for the last year and a half. How can we solve that that problem of marrying pinball with RPG elements? And I don't know. I think I personally, this is a personal reading, but I think we have a great game design here, and what we have to make sure is the implementation lives up to the great game design, right?
Yeah, definitely. Now, my voice seems to be going in and out, so we'll try and figure for this last section. We'll probably spend like the next 15, maybe 30 minutes on, and then we'll begin to wrap things up. So it's not last call yet for folks watching, but we will be getting there soon for questions. So for the final part, I guess our final section, I want to talk more about your thoughts on pinball design, specifically when it comes to designing these tables, which obviously when it comes to Pinball Invaders, it's not just about one table. So my first question for you, Leandro, when it comes to like this kind of topic is, as you guys as you're coming up with the various tables for Pinball Invaders, I guess, what are you looking at in terms of, I guess, structure or designing the actual play space for the game?
Yeah, well, that's oh, obviously we're learning a lot as we're making this game, and we play more and more. Traditional pinball tables are 2D pinball tables, and the first step is to go on paper. We draw a few sketches, and you try to imagine how the ball is gonna flow from one place of the board to the other. So that's the key word, right? Here, Josh, is flow. How do I make sure that I make this shot and that goes through this ramp? What happens? Where does this leave me? Right? Does it leave me in condition to make another shot, or it just bounces awkwardly off, a wall, and then it's boring because you have to see it fall down. So as we make more and more levels and play more, we're getting better and better at identifying those problems on paper before moving to the actual implementation. When we started, I will share at some point some of the initial designs. They look terrible, but they have improved a lot through the months. Obviously, some of the first table designs that we tackled were have a lot of influence from existing tables. Like you can see on the left, on Pinball Cadet, you have that platform that resembles a lot that platform in Space Cadet, right? The game for Windows. Then you have in another one of the levels, we have kind of a double entrance, that bifurcates and leads to two different rails. That's something that we took from the Fish Tales game, which I love the pinball table, personally. So we kind of get influences from everywhere and everything that we play and like and we feel is good. And then also we started to come up with our own original ideas. There are things that haven't been done, like moving flippers. You can see there's a flipper moving, hooked to a bumper in Pinball Cadet, or ramps, like I say, activate different elements. That's something that you cannot do on a traditional, mechanical pinball table. So for those things, the design is mostly trial and error. It has happened to me, getting up at 1 a.m. because I had this weird idea for a table, and you're like, oh man, I think this could work. You have to write it down, put it on a piece of paper, don't forget it, because this could actually work, and then you have to try, and it's pretty exciting when you try it and it actually works. Like the first boss we did, right, we had nothing to go on for that boss. We didn't know how it was going to work. It's not like it has been done on another pinball table, so it was a lot of work to see, hey, does this actually work? And and then the first time we played it was so fun to play with the music, and everything was speeding up, and it felt really kind of kept you on the edge of your seat. But that's a success story, right? Then for every idea that works, we throw away another 10, and and there's a lot of work, trial and error here, and I think one of the hardest parts is to be able, more than come up with good concepts, is to discard the ones that don't work, because it has happened that we get attached to a lot of ideas that seem great on paper, and then we have to get rid of them, and it's sad, it's like seeing an old friend go away. It happened with a few characters that we had in the game, and now we have we did we had this character that was a fish mixed with a dog, mixed with different things, and it was a missile too, right? And we had a name for it and everything. And when we said, no, this is a feature that it's not working, it was like a mechanic where you could swipe and this fish would come flying, and it would have its own little minions, and they would attack the invaders. It was so much that we had to kill it, and we even have a RIP, artwork from when we had to scrap that feature.
Yeah, it's always tricky to essentially kill your darlings when it comes to game design. Now, excuse me, going back to what you said a few minutes ago, Leandro, regarding getting the flow of the tables right. When it comes to, I guess, overall difficulty, I think this is probably a very interesting point for Pinball Invaders because, as you said, this is not a game aimed completely for the casual market. There's, as you said, there's bosses, there's persistent elements, there's the missions. I guess, how are you approaching the feel of the tables when it comes to difficulty? And we can look at a lot of classic tables depending upon how easy or hard they are. Whether it comes down to how strong the bumpers are, how easy it is to shoot a side drain, or even just some of the craziness of what shots are required to complete the various missions and modes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Well, that's the thing. We have like a list of these are all the things we can do to add difficulty to a table, right? Starting from adding more. Let's say a single enemy at the beginning of the game has just one shot and you kill him, right? So that's one hit point. So if you start with 10 enemies of one hit point, okay, that's 10 shots you have to make as a player.
Yeah.
But then, okay, double that, right? Now you have 20. It's not always fun to just keep adding more elements. That makes it, be after 7-8 levels. If all you did was adding more enemies, or when an enemy dies and another one comes in, you already want the next challenge. So, right, how do you do that? And of course, like you mentioned, one of the ways to do this is making harder shots. How do you make a harder shot? Okay, let's put a ramp here that you have something that you need to get, but the only way to get into that ramp is if you do a shot that you have to hit the ball with the last 10% of the flipper, right? Those are very difficult shots because there's a risk associated. You have to actually stop the ball, let it fall. You have to do that knowingly and hit it at the last moment. And if you miss, what you're gonna do is you're just your ball is just gonna fall through the drain. Another kind of hard thing to do is a backhand shot. Nobody, unless you know what you're doing, is going to just let it fall a little bit and shoot it backwards, right? So if you put something that can only be accessed through a backhand shot, it seems easy if you've been playing the game for a while, but believe me, for players that are new to this, they are never going to think they have to do a backhand shot to get that. So that's something we learned by iterating. The first version of the first 15 levels, because we have around the first 20 something levels done already, right? The first version was so hard because we were used to playing it here internally, and the boss was in level 7, and when a new player was getting that build and playing up to level 7, it was insane. It was impossible to pass. So what we did, we brought it down a notch, put it in level 15, added a few levels in the middle, and made the progression run smoother. But at that point, it's a lot of, you start with an idea, try to use your common sense to realize this level is gonna be easy or hard, but then you have to do a lot of testing and tweaking, and especially put it in front of players, right? Yeah. The players have to be playing as early as possible.
And I think there's a very interesting point there, Leandro, regarding the kinds of like pinball mastery tactics. For people watching this right now, whether live or recorded, there are a lot of complicated maneuvers when it comes to controlling the ball. You mentioned, of course, like a backhand or a back hit, or the ball kind of send going, if you're on the left flipper, to send to go left instead of going to the right. There's things, of course, like neutral bouncing, dead bouncing, even transitioning the ball from left to right or right to left. And one of the things that's very interesting about pinball is that there hasn't been a game that actually tried to teach someone the finer points of controlling or manipulating the ball. A lot of the stuff that I've learned basically came from watching like YouTube videos of Grandmaster play and them saying, okay, this is an advanced hack that you can use to get the ball to shift over here, or a better way to time your shots. I guess when it comes to Pinball Invaders, are you guys doing anything in terms of, I guess, a quote-unquote pinball tutorial that kind of teach people, okay, if you let the ball hit the flipper but don't move it, it will bounce over to the right or bounce the opposite flipper or things like that?
Yes, no, for sure, and that's part of our tutorial process that we have a part figured out, and another part is we're actually building it. But for example, the game is pretty hard to beat if you don't use post pass. Post pass is one of the first techniques that you have to to develop, because you may have an enemy that is up there on the right side of the screen, and what you need to do to hit is hit it with the left flipper. So what are you going to do? Just hit it randomly, hoping you are going to be able to catch the ball on the left flipper so you can hit that enemy, or stop it as soon as you can and just do a post pass. So that's a technique that you need to know how to use if you want to beat this game. That with that in mind, is that usually when you do a post pass in a real pinball table, there's a chance you make a mistake and it puts you in a position of danger. You lose a ball. It's not that easy to pull off. I would say, I myself, maybe I can pull it off 1 out of 4 times. It works, and the other 3, it either comes back or I lose it.
Oh yes.
Right, that's on a real pinball table. So what we did here, we specifically tweak the post pass. So if you do it at the right amount, in the time window, not time window, or the window that it has to bounce off the slingshot, it goes perfectly to the other. It never fails to go to the other flipper. If you do it too early, it just bounces back off and it stays on your left flipper. So there's no risk associated with the post pass here. And some players may say, hey, that does remove a little bit of realism, because you do a post pass and it either fails and you can try again, or it succeeds. But imagine for a new player that is trying to learn and really wants to like this game, and we punish that player so hard by, hey, you are supposed to do this technique by getting perfectly with precision, or you lose a ball and eventually lose the level. So that comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. How do we make it feel realistic, but at the same time make it accessible? And this is one of the things, right? The post pass is realistic, it feels good, but at the same time we remove some of the risk associated with doing some of these maneuvers, like also a leap of faith and all these different techniques. So
yeah, definitely. Now, one thing that I'm curious about, because I couldn't find this in Pinball Cadet, but are you going to allow for the strategy of nudging the table at all in either Pinball Cadet or Pinball Invaders?
Yes, nudging will be there. Actually, in Pinball Cadet, it's hidden, but if you swipe on the screen, you can do a nudge in that direction. But the truth is, we were not able to implement it 100% like we wanted, so that's why we didn't put in the tutorial or anything. But definitely there's gonna be some nudging, and also we're thinking about how nudging can lead to a tilt, and we don't want to have a tilt in this game, because let's be honest, how do you know how hard you are nudging when you're using a digital device? I feel it would feel cheap that you are playing and now your pinball is stuck and you lost the ball. So more what we are trying to do is that you can use it and it recharges. Maybe you can only do a nudge every 5 seconds or 10 seconds, something like that. And we're planning on having that also be an ability you can upgrade, right? So maybe first is 10 seconds, then you can do it 5, or maybe you can do different forces, of nudging, if you do it a little bit or if you do it more. It's still under, under design, that part, but there will definitely be nudging.
I can just imagine, like, going back where you said with, like, tilting, I can just imagine someone on their mobile device just, like, swiping really hard and knocking the phone out of their hand. I can just see that happening at some point if you're not careful.
Yeah, and again, how do we do it? Do we do it by swiping, or do we do it by shaking the device?
Oh, yeah.
Because shaking would be a cool feature, but also, I also imagine, more traditional pinball players that I don't want to be having to shake the device.
Yeah.
Right, so maybe we do the 2 things. I don't know. Those are all game design considerations that I guess we'll solve them through the next year when we work more on the game.
Now, getting back to the different pinball table designs, I guess one question I have for you, Leandro, you mentioned, of course, a few classic tables already during our cast, like Pinbot, Fishtails. I think maybe one other one. I guess, are there any like pinball tables that you really enjoyed that you either were inspired by for Pinball Invaders, or they kind of like a part of them kind of made it into the game?
Well, the ones that I enjoy the most on the real pinball side, I
Mm-hmm.
remember was the Star Trek one. I don't know if that one is that good, but I remember I liked it a lot
Mm-hmm.
because I used to play on that arcade that I mentioned at the beginning, and then the Adams Family. That was my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
That was my favorite by far. And then the Terminator 2. I remember that school you had like the Terminator school that you could send the ball through through that toy on the table. So I said that's my top three. And yes, we are trying to put a lot of these cool elements. When I see something that works, like hey, let's put this on a table, and that's a good thing, right? We have we're playing at 100 levels, so we can take elements from everywhere and do okay in this level you have a taste of this, in this level you have a taste of this other element. At the same time, we don't want to blatantly copy another existing table because that's already
Mm-hmm.
been done. It's been done great. We want to try to do something new, and this is some of the comments that I've seen from from the people, like hey, I'm not interested in this because I only want real pinball tables, and that's fine. And you already have great products, Farsight, Pinball
Mm-hmm.
Arcade. That's amazing. What is the point of replicating the same thing when
Yeah.
it's already been done great? So this is always innovating with something like this. It's kind of a risk, but also risks, are new opportunities. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where we are.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about the challenge, especially of developing something original for pinball. Because obviously, if someone wants a real pinball table, your option is you're going to have to physically make a table like this. But again, with something like Pinball Invaders, or even like the game like Pinball FX series, those kinds of tables just literally can't exist in a physical space. And as you've said, there's always that balance you have to strive between: do I make this 100% realistic, or do I tilt things to make it more fair or more balanced by the fact that this is not a real table?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and also you have to think about this. We're proposing this concept. We're proposing this game to the
Mm-hmm.
players. We are doing this game. We try it ourselves. We try it with friends and family, and obviously, they like it. So that gives you motivation. But this is not that we are coming, and saying, hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is what the game we're gonna give you, and you have to play like this. We actually want to hear the players and see where they want us to take this project, because
Mm-hmm.
if a lot of players say, "Hey, you know what? I love this concept, but I would like with the same physics, the same engine, can we do a few recreations of real tables?" Yeah, why not? If there's enough demand, so the channel for that conversation is open. To go back and forth. We are not Nothing is set in stone, and that's the good thing of, I think, being an indie game developer.
Mm-hmm.
We're a small team and we can take the decisions. We can talk and make decisions fast, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
not something that gets lost, in behind, a wall that you cannot see who's making
Mm-hmm.
the game, or there's not that communication open. So that's why I would like to be able to have that feedback with the players and see what they feel, what they think, and what else they want added into the game.
Mm-hmm. And I guess going back to my question from a minute ago, some of my favorite tables I like would be, I think, a lot of the ones that you mentioned, Leandro. I also really like the Twilight Zone table. Star Trek, of course, another really good one. And I think, like most pinball fans, I'm really hoping we see a lot more come from Farsight Studios. Because, again, like a lot of those physical tables, there's a sense of personality to them. And I guess that's another really good point that I want to ask you about. Obviously, by the fact that Pinball Invaders is digital means you don't, again, have that physical space. But I guess, in your opinion, how would you, I guess, give a digital table that sense of personality? Like the same that we see from stuff like the Addams Family, Star Trek, and the like.
Hmm. Well, that's I would like to know the right answer to that myself
Yeah.
because that's part of the challenge. I think what's going to happen is that of the 100 levels we are doing, there are gonna be some that for some reason are gonna be the most loved. It always happens, right?
Yeah.
There are gonna be a lot of levels that are like, oh man, this level is great, it's amazing, I'm really enjoying this level. And I personally think those are going to be the boss fights. I think the boss fights are gonna have such a personality to them that people are going to remember them because of the music and all. We're gonna pour all our soul into those levels. And something else I like to see. This is a side note, but I would love to see someday, if this is successful and this game works, and touching wood here, but I think it's going to be successful. Is build a pinball invaders, real pinball table. And I don't know how that would work. I think we can have targets there. They are not going to be able to move so much in a real mechanical table, but that would be a lot of fun to see.
Now, keeping with this question, I think one I really want to ask you about, Leandro, is the difficulty of the missions. Because again, when it comes to pinball, it is one of those things where the skill of the player is very much made readily apparent. If you know again like the tactics of or the various advanced maneuvers, you're going to be completing modes and getting through things very quickly. If you're just like a novice, you're just going to be like smacking the ball and just hoping it lands back on the flipper. When it comes to the structure of Pinball Invaders, I guess, how are you approaching things by saying, okay, this mission is going to be for easy, this mission is for medium, this one is for an expert, and so on and so forth?
Well, yeah, that's interesting too. And we have a few ways to do that. Like for example, the first, I would say 7, 8 levels are hooked in a way that if you just button smash, you're gonna beat them because the first 7, 8 levels just you have this board and then you have the enemies and you hit everywhere and you will eventually hit all of them or lose. So those are easier. But what happens here, for example, how can we make it a little bit more challenging? I mentioned the multipliers before. So the multipliers in this game are, you go up in the multipliers depending on the chain of enemies. So let's say you hit the first 4 enemies, that moves your multiplier to 2x, and then it starts coming back down. So as long as you keep hitting enemies, your multiplier stays up. After now you hit 8, and then you hit 16, right? Like a combo system, right? That's how you get a multiplier. So a good player will be able to keep, to make those accurate shots and keep the multiplier up. So then there will be required missions in the levels and optional missions. So if you just beat the level with a bronze badge, all you have to do is complete the required missions. To get the silver badge, you have to complete all the required and optional missions. But an optional mission, for example, let's say the required mission is, defeat all the enemies. The optional mission is, okay, make 100,000 points. Okay, in order to make 100,000 points with that quantity of enemies that we have on that screen, you have to at least reach a 3x, and maybe at points 4x multipliers. Else you won't be able to get that. And then the last badge, the gold badge, you only get it if you do a perfect game, right? You don't lose any of your balls. So there are gonna be different levels of challenges, and we hope that new players will just beat the levels, get a bronze badge, but more skilled players and hardcore players will be able to get the gold insignia in every level and also compete in the leaderboards to try to be first on the top 10.
Now, I forgot if you mentioned this, Leandro, but are there any actual rewards for getting the silver and gold badge in a level?
Well, yes, and that's also part of what we are designing. So, for example, one of the rewards is when you finish a chapter, you also have like an insignia for the whole chapter, right? So if you get at least silver badge, that chapter has a silver insignia, if you get gold badge. So you do definitely unlock, you know, a special one of these special balls that I mentioned per chapter. So, for example, the I don't know, double multiplier ball that you can start with a 2x multiplier. Okay, you know, you beat the first chapter all with gold, you know, with gold insignias. You unlock that, and there are going to be a lot of unlockables that depends on your, you know, on how you are beating the levels, or on your skill level. We're also thinking about doing, you know, for example, when you play the game and you collect coins through the level, right? The level has coins everywhere that you can get or not, right? You have to make some accurate shots uh, to get those coins. For example, in one level, the coins are in a ramp, but the ramp is closed, so you have to open all the switches and then go through the ramp, right? Totally optional. But you can get those coins, and then if you beat the level with a silver badge, we're planning on giving you, you know, like, okay, you duplicate your coins, so you triplicate your reward for that level too. That's what we have planned so far, and I guess, you know, as we progress on the game design, more ideas should come up.
Now, speaking about coins, I guess one thing we didn't touch on yet that I want to clarify for folks watching is the currency model in game. So, for the folks listening, Leandro, what kind of currencies and their functionality are you planning for Pinball Invaders?
Well, there's only going to be one currency, that is the coins. We call them coins now to not confuse, but you know, we internally call them credits because they resemble like arcade tokens, you know, or tokens or credits. We still are not sure what the final name is going to be, but it's only going to be that currency. And you know, it's like in all the other games with RPG elements, like in Diablo you have gold, in Zelda you have rupees. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's only one. And you know, there's nothing in this game that is you have to pay for these coins, or you have to pay for this hard currency, or that's the only way to get it. We are not building anything of that into the game, and you know, I personally, as game designer, I don't like that model of having a soft and a hard currency.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that one either, especially when it can be very easily manipulated to say that only the premium currency will actually unlock something of value, and everything else you have just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. I've been, you know, frustrating myself with that model in the past, and you know, I don't know, maybe, you know, when you are leading a huge game that depends on microtransactions, it makes sense to go with a design like that, but it's a completely different business model to the one we have, right? We are an indie game studio. We want to make games that we would love to play, and the games we would love to play are these, and we don't necessarily need to be, you know, squeezing a lot of microtransactions out of here or there.
Definitely. I'm trying to think if there's anything else pinball design related I want to ask you, Leandro. For you folks watching this live right now, I guess this is going to be officially last call for questions. So if you have anything relating to Pinball Invaders, or the Kickstarter itself, please get them in within the next 2 to 3 minutes, because we will be wrapping things up really soon. Now, I guess one thing that I'm just wondering about when it comes to Pinball Invaders, let me see, I'm going to pull up the Kickstarter for a second, because I was looking at some of these screenshots that you have up for it. Where was it? Here it is. I'm noticing one thing that I was just curious about. I'm seeing some of the upgrades that you have available, and there's stuff like increase like the life of your base and stuff like that. What is the base that you're referring to in that kind of example?
Oh, well, that's something important that we didn't talk about. So your base actually can break. This is initially when you play, you don't have any outlanes. There's no, how in traditional pinball you have the outlanes that your ball can fall through there.
Mm-hmm.
So in this game, you don't have outlines in the boards initially, and for the first 10 levels, that's not a concern. But then the invaders get smarter and they start shooting back.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this kind of speed that they send, and your base is, made of all of this is spatial, right? So it's all made of circuitry.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they start damaging your base until it causes a short circuit and it opens a hole. And as you can see in some of the pictures, for example, in if you're looking at the campaign in power ups, you see that there are some like 4 blue blocks that lead to the flippers.
Mm-hmm.
So those are 4 places where you can actually get holes in your base, and your ball can fall through there. So the enemies will be able to shoot you. You can avoid that though. You can hit their speed with your ball and avoid getting hit. Or you can also use the heal ball. The heal ball will repair your base. Or you can also, as you saw, upgrade your base. So instead of initially it takes 2 shots to destroy it, but then you can take 3 or 4, or we'll even have like a special shield that protects it from being hit, but you have to use the shield before it gets destroyed, right?
Yeah.
So there's a balance. Do I want to get it destroyed and fix it in case I need, and run the risk of losing a ball, or do I want to just put a shield right now and I'm using one of my power ups, but I don't run any risk? So that's up to the player too.
All right, cool. Now, here's a very interesting question that I have for you, Leandro. As we've said already, Pinball Invaders will be coming to the mobile side first, with hopefully plans for a PC or other platform release. And this is a question that I'm kind of curious about, especially with trying to get into mobile gaming right now. If you guys are able to port this to other platforms, are you going to be, or how are you thinking about changing the monetization model for the game in terms of, like, if someone's playing this on the mobile, how will it be different from playing it on the PC or the Switch or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I don't think in mobile it's going to be free to play, and then like I say, you have this credit system where after 5 credits you either have to watch an ad or wait for them to refill, and buying is optional. But I guess if we go with the PC version, or this is how I was thinking about this initially, right? We release on Steam, for example. It's just buy the game for the same price that you would buy the remove the infinite credits in the mobile version, and that would be it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I think that's fair, and I think the fact that you're tying both prices to the same thing, I think also helps things out, because I've seen a lot of indie developers who have done the porting between mobile to PC and vice versa, and the PC version has like a way higher price to it compared to the mobile side. And you always have people who go, why is it so much money to buy on the PC when I can buy on the mobile for X amount?
Yeah, and I don't see us going that route unless we get requested for some. I don't know which ones it will be right now, but let's say we have to build a lot of specific features just for the PC, and even though, right, because that's the thing, you sell it on a new platform, and that kind of offsets the being able to sell it there offsets. Okay, yeah, sure, you have to put some effort to develop it. So yeah, I don't see us going that route. I want to be fair to the players. So.
Yeah. All right, we are about to hit an hour and 40 minutes in, so I think it is about time to say good night for our show. So to wrap things up, I want to get back to the Kickstarter and overall plans for Pinball Invaders. So for those of you watching this live right now, there are 10 days left in the Kickstarter. I'm going to have this archived and put up on YouTube probably in the next day or so. So if you're watching this recorded, the Kickstarter should still be going up. I'll include a link to it in the description below. But for people watching this right now, Leandro, if the Kickstarter is successful, What are your plans for actually releasing Pinball Invaders? Like when, I should say.
Yeah, so we're targeting around mid next year,
Mm-hmm.
around let's think July 2018. So well, yeah, that's the target, and obviously, it depends if we can get the funds to do it or not. Hopefully, I think so. We have had a lot of support already, so I those funds and I'll be able to commit 100% to work on the development of the game right away.
Mm-hmm. Great. I just noticed, for anyone watching this live, I just got some kind of update from OBS saying that it may have caused a slight stutter in the stream. If you're watching this live right now, did you hear everything that Leandro said regarding the amount of time for the Kickstarter? Please let me know if it did get cut out. I will have him repeat it. Looks like Oscar sent you a comment in chat, which unfortunately is not in my native language, so I can't read that and ask you.
I I just see Oscar made a comment there, and I wanted to say thanks for the comment, thanks for trying the game. Oscar, he's saying he's gonna try it, so thanks a lot for that if you're listening. Hope you like it.
Yep. And again, for those of you watching this either live or recorded, you can play Pinball Cadet right now on Android and iOS. I did download it a few nights ago. I played a little bit of it. I'm liking what it is. Very interesting. It's just so weird playing different pinball games with different physics models. It's like trying to relearn how to ride a bike, I think. Because I've played, like this past week, I played the Pinball of X3. Oh, let me get my finger up there. I played Farsight, the Pinball Arcade, and then I played Pinball Cadet. And it's just like weird because I'm expecting the ball to operate in different ways, and it's like my brain is telling me to do one thing, and the table's doing something else.
Yeah, there's definitely a learning process. It's like you have to relearn physics every time.
Yes, it is. Let me see. Anything else regarding the Kickstarter? Oh, I guess for people watching, as you said, you're planning on spending or getting Pinball Invaders out in the next year. Will there be continued updates for Pinball Cadet during that time?
Yes. We're really committed to the project. Actually, we're preparing a huge update right now for Cadet. That when we started getting a lot of feedback of the performance and frame rate on different devices. So that's something we took seriously. Sometimes, as I said before, and I'm going to say it again, as a small studio, we don't have the resources to test on 100 devices of all kinds before releasing. So what we can do is that release, and hope players will understand that we are committed to this, and everything in the next couple of weeks, all the performance drops that you see on maybe lower end device or a device that is 32-bit. We have problems with 32-bit devices, for example, but that's all getting fixed. And I'm actually testing right now a version where we overhauled all, completely the way we have all the sprites packed into the game. And I'm seeing, a huge frame rate increase, even in devices where the game was running at 15, 20 frames and it was unplayable. Now it's running at more than 40. So I hope this will really, make an improvement in all the players' experiences.
Yeah. And do you have a time frame for when that update's going live, Leandro?
Yeah, I mean, for Android, I'm probably going to upload this sometime tomorrow. And from iOS, we're gonna send it through for review during the weekend, and hopefully early next week it will be up.
Cool. Now, I guess here's a very interesting question regarding obviously funding Pinball Invaders. For people who decide to buy, or I should say remove or get like infinite play or whatever in Pinball Cadets, will that like help contribute towards the actual Kickstarter goal for Pinball Invaders in any way?
For people that already buy, you mean the remove ads in the game?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's alternative, right? We were really hoping the campaign will be successful, and if not, like I told you, we're hard work, very hard working here at the studio. We are also work for higher studio, so we'll keep, doing it. We'll have to do it way slower, of course, because we'll have to struggle with, getting the funds and, supporting Pinball Cadet and redirect, the revenue we make with that game. But me and the whole team, right? We are committed to make this happen, no matter how. Hopefully, we can be successful with the campaign, and that will make the whole road way, way smoother than if we have to hit all those all obstacles. But we'll get it done.
Awesome. So I think with that, I am just about out of things to talk about. So, to wrap things up, Leandro, do you have any final thoughts or anything you would like to say to, I guess, tie a bow on today's discussion?
What can I say? No, just, pinball fans. I want to make sure it's clear that the game, we're not trying to do, just a casual games, or we're not trying to do, a small little, casual game that you can play 2-3 minutes, and that's all there is to it. We actually want to make a deep game, with RPG elements, with a great physics and a great pinball feeling. And I've seen there are some comments that the game looks very friendly. Graphically it looks very friendly, and actually that sets back some users. It's like, hey, I don't think this is going to be to my taste. But I guess we decided to show that because we want to show that even though by definition, a pinball game is going to be something that requires skills, at the same time we're gonna make it accessible. But at the same time, again, there are going to be the game gets darker and change the styles, and as the game progresses, it's not just such a all happy and like it looks in the screens. It goes full Devil's Crash by the end, if you know what I mean. That classic digital pinball game.
Oh yeah, nice. All right. So I think with that, we are going to wrap things up. For those of you watching this live or record, again, be sure to check out the Kickstarter for Pinball Invaders. I'll include a link to it in the description below. And check out Pinball Cadet, again, available on iOS and Android now. For those of you watching this live, we are going to say goodnight, but I will be back on later tonight for my weekly live show. If you want to see more pinball play here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel, be it from the Pinball Arcade, FX, or whatever, please let me know, because I'm always up for a fun game of pinball here. Again, Leandro, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and definitely the best of luck with finishing strong for the Kickstarter.
Yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to talk with me about the game, and I really enjoyed our chat, and everything we talked about was fun.
Great. So with that said, we are going to end things here. If you are new, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. So with all that said, like I said, for you guys watching this live, be sure to check back tonight around 9:30, 10 Eastern for our live show. And again, for you record folks, we have more content coming up daily. So that is all I have to say for now. Thanks again for tuning in, and hopefully we'll be back with another developer live cast in the near future here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel. Till then, have a good night.